Hi guys, this is Kathy Hawk showing you Google Maps used as a virtual field trip. I know there's a lot of cool things out there right now that you can use for Google, some add-ins. There's even a beta program that uses Google Earth that you can create a tour builder. And so I created this tour builder through Google Maps and Google Earth's add-on extension. It is a beta program, so there are some quirks to it. If you do Tour Builder, you can definitely connect the dots if it's one tour, but because I'm kind of showing the students that there's 3 different narrators within the story of Frankenstein, I'm going to use the Google Maps application to show that. So right now, what I want to kind of tell you is there are 3 different sides to the story in Victor Frankenstein. So I'm just going to show you the description that I provided for the students. So this traces the journey of Frankenstein, multiple locations throughout the story. You can see there are probably a couple dozen locations throughout the story. So I think it's super important, especially for my visual learners, to see where and how these locations are connected. So the blue wheel, if you look, is going to be Robert Walton's journey, who he is the narrator. The red circle with the heartbeat is Victor Frankenstein's journey, and you'll see the green robot is the monster's journey. So let's kind of take a look at this map. Now I'm in the teacher created side of it. I can show you here in a second what the preview version looks like, but anytime you see the blue wheel in the story, that is where Robert Walton tells his side of the story. Now it's called a frame narrative, meaning it starts with the same narrator and it ends with the same narrator. So you can kind of see down here, the last one is Robert Walton's side of the story. So if you look on each location, there's a couple of things that you can do with it. If you click on St. Petersburg, Russia, which is where the story begins, not only does it give a location using latitude and longitude, but I can insert whatever picture I want. And I just gave them a modern interpretation of what St. Petersburg would have looked like. Now the story takes place, in the 1800s, so it's not going to look the same, but still the kids can kind of get a visual representation. And I can add a video, I can add a YouTube link to it, I can even add directions on how to get to that location from their current location. I can even kind of edit the style on it. I can change icons, I can give it a different color, I can even select some more icons that are not ones that are located there. But I try to just pick ones that I felt were pretty easy for the kids to understand. Particularly, I did the wheel because it kind of reminded me of ship's wheel, and the story starts on a ship. So anyways, the location of the story starts here in St. Petersburg, and then I can click into Archangel and show a modern interpretation. The other thing too, between location to location, I can see how many miles Victor would have to travel, or in this case Robert Walton would have to travel from St. Petersburg up to the next location. I just go up to, it kind of looks like a ruler. It measures the distance and areas between. So if I click on 2 different locations, I can click on that one and it shows me the direct mileage right there. Now the second location is all the way up here into the North Pole. It doesn't give us an exact location in the North Pole, it just says the North Pole, so we can kind of just make an assumption where it might be. So that's the distance. The cool thing too is there is also a line distance that I can add a line or a shape. So if I click on 2 different locations, I can add that. Now I think that's really cool to show the sequence of events, but the frustrating part is if I'm bouncing back and forth between 2 narrators, like I don't really want to show the distance from where Robert Walton is to where Victor Frankenstein is, just because it doesn't make sense in the story. But anyways, that's just one of the things that you can do. If I'm ready to drop another marker or another location, I just simply go up here and add a marker, and I can put it anywhere into Greenland, and I can label it, put a description there, add a picture, whatever I want to do with that. So that's kind of neat. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that just because I don't need that. That's not part of the lesson. So I just wanted to make sure students also got a good indication that there are multiple parts of the story told from different perspectives. So if I zoom in a little bit more, you can kind of see a little bit where the story takes place all over the place. Pretty much centrally located as far as the monster, down in Germany and Switzerland, but you can see where and when in the story that it jumps back and forth between two different characters. So I'll just click through a couple. It's good to have a description of what location is what, particularly the monsters side of the story. You can see where they pick up, and you can kind of see the shack maybe of where the story began, and see how it kind of jumps back and forth between the two. So sometimes kids tend to have a hard time really seeing the big picture of what it looks like with Frankenstein, because there are so many moving parts and pieces into the setting that it's very difficult to understand that. So for my visual learners, it's certainly helpful to provide something along the lines of this. So now, if I'm ready to add a layer, like I could add a separate section, and kind of like layers on top, on top, on top into that, I can certainly click up here and add a layer and kind of, add places or import different files or spreadsheets to link back to the map. So I'm going to delete that because I don't need it. The other thing too that I really, really like about this concept is showing it in the student's view. They don't see as much that I do, but they can kind of check it out from the student's perspective. This isn't a view only, so this is what they see from their side of the story. Same thing, I give them a key, kind of show them where that's at, and they can scroll through each section and kind of see where it is in comparison to the rest of the story. So my students always tend to like this part of the lesson. I've taught this for the last 2 years, and they always seem to have this like aha moment where they're like, oh, now I get it. Now I can kind of see where Victor was in comparison to Robert Walton, and how much he has to travel to get from point A to point B, and where the monster travels and how he links himself up into that, and where the story finally concludes. Because I think there is a lot of what goes into a story is what happens with this setting and how that interacts with each character. So because there are 3 different aspects or 3 different narrators in the story, it's very important to kind of get that aspect of it. Now, I have looked into a couple other virtual field trips using Google Earth, which would give you a live picture, maybe not necessarily a live picture, but a recent picture via satellite, or sometimes you might see the Google cars driving around. They can give you a street view of what things might look like at that point. I don't think that's as important to do with Frankenstein because of the fact that it was written in the 1800s. Now, let's say, for example, you're a social studies teacher and you want students to see what the distance would be from England to, say, Jamestown. You could kind of get a picture of what the port would look like in Jamestown and see the distance of what it would look like to get to England. So you can also see up-to-date pictures, like maybe, for example, you want them to take a virtual field trip of Washington, D.C., where they bounce around from monument to monument to monument. That is something that I have seen people do in the past as well. So that's my lesson on Google Maps. Sometimes I do some comprehension questions to show students and to assess learning to make them understand what locations they're going through and how that incorporates into the story. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Thanks.